Have you ever considered that the growing silence in your marriage might be a divine whisper you're failing to hear? A quiet voice that, if continually ignored, could reshape the landscape of your union in ways you never imagined. Picture 4. A moment that the fractures appearing between you, or the distance you feel, are not merely the effects of time, but echoes of a warning you have yet to decipher. What if the greatest threat to your relationship isn't found in arguments, but in the deafening quiet of a truth that is being refused? There are profound secrets to the spiritual architecture of a relationship, truths that go beyond the visible world. When these truths are neglected, they can transform the sanctuary of love into a field of silent ruins. This isn't about a simple breakdown in communication. It's a disconnection from something greater, a divine melody that, once out of tune, can throw the entire symphony of two souls into discord. What would you do if you realized that every choice, every omission, is weaving the destiny of your forever in a way you do not yet understand? Prepare yourself to question everything you thought you knew about the foundation of a marriage. What is about to be revealed is not a mere theory, but a mirror reflecting the unseen consequences of failing to attune your soul to the divine frequency. It's like strolling through a vibrant garden, oblivious to the roots drying up beneath the soil, or sailing on a calm ocean, failing to notice the storm gathering on the horizon of your faith. The truth, more often than not, doesn't scream. It whispers through signs that only attentive hearts can perceive. What will become of your marriage if you do not listen? The answer isn't in some distant oracle, but in a journey of self-discovery and spiritual revelation that begins right now. If you sense there is more happening behind the curtains of your relationship and are ready to uncover the mysteries that could save it or change it forever, then this is your moment to connect. Subscribe to our channel, because every second you invest in this pursuit could be the key to rewriting your destiny. Every union is meant to have a divine blueprint, a sacred map drawn by hands that transcend time and space. But what if, unknowingly, we are tearing this map apart, page by page, with the very hands that once swore to build? A marriage is more than a contract. It's a covenant of souls, a reflection of the divine on earth. When the voice that designed it is disregarded, the foundations begin to crumble in silences that hurt more than any shout. It's a subtle drift, almost imperceptible, that begins, not in major conflicts, but in the absence of deep listening. Ancient wisdom guides us with this truth. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. James 1:25. Yet, how often, in the rush of daily life and the illusion of control, do we lean only on our own limited perspective, forgetting there is a greater compass, an unseen guide who longs to lead us? This trust is not a blind leap, but an acknowledgement that some truths can only be unveiled by a source that transcends human logic. We start to feel an inexplicable weight, a fog that settles between gazes that once met with perfect clarity. It's not a fight, not an overt betrayal, but a quiet erosion, like water dripping relentlessly on a stone, wearing it down without alarm. Joy feels more distant, shared dreams become solitary pursuits, and the home that should be a refuge sometimes transforms into a labyrinth of empty echoes. It's the feeling that something essential has been lost, but memory cannot pinpoint the exact moment of its departure. These are the first indicators, the whispers of the divine alert trying to break through the barriers of our pride and self-sufficiency. They are the small cracks in a wall not built on the rock, the disagreements that widen into chasms, the indifference that settles where passion once lived. It is the revelation that the absence of God's voice doesn't just create a void, it creates a space filled with shadows that distort the reality of love and partnership, turning what was meant to be a safe harbor into a stormy sea. And then, a question silences the soul. What are we truly building if the foundation isn't divine? What happens when the melody meant to guide the steps of two hearts is drowned out by the noise of the world, or worse, by the silence of our own refusal to hear? The price of ignoring this warning can be the loss of something that not even time can restore, a fragmentation that extends beyond the marriage, touching every fiber of your existence. Prepare yourself, for the truth that unfolds may be deeper and more challenging than any expectation. The absence of the divine voice in a marriage doesn't manifest with thunder and lightning, but with a deafening silence that creeps into the cracks of your routine. It's the feeling that even when you are beside an invisible abyss is growing, a disconnection not solved by words, but worsened by the lack of a deeper harmony. Have you ever found yourself in moments of loneliness for two, where the other's presence felt more like a distant echo than a shared song, as if the invisible thread binding you was silently unraveling? It is as if the very foundation of love is being put to the test, and timeless wisdom reminds us, therefore everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. Matthew 7:24-25. This passage isn't just an old metaphor, it's a mirror reflecting the fragility of any human construction, including the most intimate one. When it lacks a foundation that transcends the material, what have you been building in your marriage, and what is the rock upon which it stands? The signs are subtle, yet relentless. They begin with a loss of lightness in your gestures, a decrease in empathy during conversations, and a routine that becomes a burden instead of a rhythm. It's when intimacy retreats, not from a lack of desire, but because of an invisible barrier rising between your hearts, preventing full surrender. Or when your partner's joy no longer resonates with the same intensity in your soul, and their small victories seem less significant if they aren't your own. These are the symptoms of a spiritual drought that is causing the garden that should be flourishing to wither. Imagine a once mighty river, full of life, whose flow begins to be diverted by small stones until its original bed becomes a dry, narrow trickle. So it is with a marriage that ignores the voice that nourishes it. Strength turns into fragility, control becomes chaos, desire gives way to fear, and presence vanishes into absence, even when your bodies are close. The memories that once were bridges now seem like chasms, and the search for relief becomes a silent escape into oneself, far from the one who should be your harbor. What have you allowed to settle in the unspoken spaces of your relationship? What has been neglected, silenced, or simply unseen, while the essence of your covenant fades away? This is not a judgment, but an urgent invitation to deep introspection. Search for what was lost, or perhaps never truly found. For the truth is, without a connection to the divine, love can become a faded tapestry, and a marriage an empty house where only the echoes of what once was still resound. The journey to rediscovery begins with the courage to listen to what the silence has to say. What happens when the mirror that reflects the soul of your marriage begins to fog over? Not from steam, but from an invisible mist of inattention and silence. It's at this point that the signs become clearer to those with eyes to see, and more painful for those who still refuse to feel. Have you noticed your conversations becoming superficial, as if floating on the surface of an ocean of unsaid feelings, avoiding the depths where truth resides? It is the absence of that connecting gaze, of that welcoming ear, of that touch that calms the inner storm. The word warns us about the importance of unity and harmony, as in, ... then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit, and of one mind. Philippians 2:22. When God's voice is silenced, this partnership weakens. The burden of one who falls is no longer shared, and the partner's silence becomes an abyss, not a support. It's as if the melody of two hearts transforms into two dissonant solos, each playing its own song of pain. The signs manifest in small cracks in the structure of daily life, irritation that appears from nowhere, impatience that becomes constant, the difficulty in forgiving small faults that were once irrelevant. It's the feeling that your partner has become a familiar stranger, someone with whom you share a roof but not a soul. The joy of being together diminishes, replaced by an inexplicable weariness, an escape into isolation, whether in thought or in activities that don't include your partner. It is a life that becomes an individual script, where once there was a shared plot. Think of a garden that, for lack of water and light, begins to dry up. The flowers lose their vibrancy, the leaves wilt, and the scent that once intoxicated gives way to the smell of parched earth. So is love when its divine source is ignored. Compliments become rare, criticisms frequent, hugs become mechanical, kisses become empty, complicity vanishes, and the laughter that once united you becomes a distant sound. It is the physical presence that remains, but the soul is absent, wandering through deserts of loneliness, even while next to the one you promised to love. What have you felt in your own garden? Which flowers are withering? Which fruits are no longer being harvested? The truth is that these signs are not mere coincidences, but urgent alerts that something profound needs to be restored. It is the voice of God whispering through the discomfort, the silent pain, the growing distance. To ignore them is to allow the erosion to continue until the foundation dissolves, and what was meant to be a home becomes just a set of ruins, a monument to what could have been, but was not. The choice to listen, or not, is in your hands. Faced with the foggy mirror, the silent fissures, and the signs that scream without a sound, the question that echoes is not what is wrong, but what will you do with this unfolding truth? The divine exhortation is not a condemnation, but an urgent invitation to recalibrate your inner compass, to seek the source that can restore what seemed lost. Are you willing to dive into the depths of your soul, to confront the shadows that have settled, and to allow a greater light to illuminate the dark corners of your commitment? Timeless wisdom points the way. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. Matthew 7:7. This is not an empty promise, but a call to action, an invitation to break the cycle of inertia and self-sufficiency. It is the moment to bend your knees, not in defeat, but in search of a strength that transcends your own, of a clarity the world cannot offer. Prayer, in this context, is not a rite, but an intimate dialogue with the source of life, a cry for help that is always heard. Spiritual reflection then becomes a map for rescue. It is the act of silencing the external noise to hear the voice that pulses within you, the voice that guides you to the roots of your being and your relationship. Ask yourself, what have I been prioritizing? What has taken the place of the one who should be the center? The answer will not come in complex words, but in feelings, in resurfacing memories, in a discomfort that points to the need for realignment. It is a process of bearing the soul, of recognizing one's own faults and the need for a greater intervention. This isn't about looking for magic solutions, but about returning to the principles that sustain life and love. It's like a gardener who, seeing his plants wilt, does not give up, but investigates the soil, the water, the light, seeking to restore what is essential. Divine guidance manifests in intuition, in wise counsel, in the peace that floods the heart when the decision to trust is made. It is the courage to admit that, alone, a burden is too heavy, and that true strength lies in surrendering to a wisdom greater than your own. What are you waiting for to take the first step on this journey of rediscovery and restoration? What prevents you from seeking the source that can water your marriage again, turning the desert into an oasis? God's voice is not a distant thunder, but a constant whisper, an invitation to transformation. It is the chance to rewrite your story, to heal the invisible wounds, and to rebuild on an unshakable rock. The choice to listen, to act, to surrender to this guidance is the turning point that can determine the future of your forever. This pursuit of divine guidance is not a one-way street, but a delicate dance between surrender and action. It's not enough to simply cry out. We must open our hearts to receive the answers, which often come disguised as intuitions, unexpected encounters, or a peace that settles in even amidst a storm. Have you allowed yourself to quiet the world's noise, to hear the melody that the soul of your marriage is trying to play, the one that longs to be heard and harmonized with the voice that created it? The Bible teaches us, whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you, saying, "This is the way, walk in it." Isaiah 32:21. This profound truth reminds us that while we have the freedom to make our plans, true wisdom lies in aligning those plans with divine direction. It's an invitation to release the reins of excessive control, to let go of the need to have all the answers, and to trust that a greater intelligence is orchestrating every detail, every challenge, and every opportunity for your union's growth. The signs that you are beginning to hear this voice manifest in a subtle yet powerful shift in your relationship's dynamic. Patience becomes more present, compassion flourishes where judgment once stood, and the capacity to forgive expands, dissolving hurts that seemed permanent. It is the rediscovery of lightness, of shared laughter, of that gaze that reconnects with its former depth. It's not the absence of problems, but the presence of a force that transcends them, turning obstacles into bridges for a deeper connection. Think of the metaphor of a boat adrift on a raging sea. No matter how hard the crew strives to row against the current, without a compass in the direction of a lighthouse, the effort is in vain. God's voice is that lighthouse, that internal compass which, once activated, allows the ship of your marriage to find safe harbor, even in the most turbulent waters. It is the strength that emerges from fragility, the control born from surrender, the desire renewed in overcome fear, and the presence that fills the absence, restoring wholeness. What are you willing to let go of so that this voice can become the main melody in your home? What needs to be deconstructed so that the new can blossom? The answer is not in an instruction manual, but in the courage to be exposed, to be vulnerable, to surrender to a process of transformation that begins from the inside out. For when a marriage is built on the rock of faith and divine listening, it becomes unshakable, a living testimony that love, when guided by a higher power, can overcome any challenge and flourish forever. And now, as these last words dissolve into the air, feel the echo that remains. This is not an ending, but the dawn of a new perception, a seed planted in the fertile soil of your soul. The questions that began this journey have not vanished. They have transformed into keys, unlocking inner doors you may not have known existed. What you have felt, what has been revealed in the quiet, is not just information, it's an invitation to rewrite the melody of your love, with the notes of a voice that was always there, waiting to be heard. Think of your marriage not as a final destination, but as a constantly blooming garden that demands more than just your presence. It requires attentive listening to the one who created it. The cracks that once seemed insurmountable can now be seen as scars that tell a story of overcoming, of resilience. The fog dissipates, revealing the clarity of a path that was always before you, waiting only for you to dare to see beyond the visible, beyond what human eyes can capture. This journey of discovery does not end here, for divine truth is a river that flows incessantly, always revealing new landscapes. What has been awakened in you is the certainty that there is a greater power, a love that transcends the human, capable of restoring, healing, and transforming what seemed beyond repair. Let this feeling of renewal, this newly kindled flame, be the compass that guides every step, every choice, every breath of your forever. If this message has touched the depths of your being, if you felt its truth echo in your heart and you wish to continue this passage of discovery and transformation, then the next step is a natural one. Leave a like so that more hearts can be reached. Share it with those who are also seeking this light. Comment with your reflections so we can build this community of faith together. And above all, subscribe to the channel so that this journey of listening and revelation never stops.